Good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to welcome you this afternoon or this evening, depending where you are, to this webinar featuring the Interfaith Encounters group from Israel and the West Bank. We're really looking forward to your message this afternoon. But before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge that the world is in grief over this war, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And our group has produced a statement, and I thought I might just start by reading that statement. The Christian-Jewish Dialogue of Toronto expresses its deep sorrow about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a country of people with many faiths. We are in awe of the tremendous bravery and determination of the Ukrainian people. And we call on the government of Canada to send aid and equipment to Ukraine and to open our borders to receive refugees. We also pray for success in stopping the invasion through sanctions and diplomatic efforts. So our thoughts are very much with the people of Ukraine and, in fact, of Europe in general and the Russian people as well at this very difficult time. And in North America, when we gather in groups, in the last few years, we've developed a process where we acknowledge the John Joseph, tremendous
Someone must have two microphones on at the same time. So I'm not sure who. Does anybody have a phone?
When we meet, we acknowledge that these lands were originally occupied by our Indigenous First Peoples. So I'll read the following statement. First Nations people of North America call this sacred land Turtle Island. It has been enjoyed by many peoples for thousands of years. It is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and Métis peoples. They lived on the land under the dish with one spoon wampum belt covenant to peaceably share and care for the resources of the land around the Great Lakes. Later, it became subject along with settlers to the Williams Treaties. Inhabiting this land today, we open our hearts and commit ourselves to listening, learning, and living with love, with respect for all our relations. So welcome, and I turn the meeting over now to Friedel Brief, who will introduce our speakers.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here today, and I have been a long-time admirer of the work of the Israel Interfaith Association. As a matter of fact, I get regular emails from them telling me about the dialogues that they are doing, and I find them very, I find them very enlightening, and they give me a sense of hope all the time. So I'm so glad they're going to explain to us today what they're doing and how they're doing it in the time of COVID, which is not very easy. First, John Joseph is going to show you a very short introduction to IEA, and we're going to get a sense of their picture of themselves. So, John Joseph, could you put on that short film? Thank you.
For as long as most people alive today can remember, there has never been a lasting peace in the Middle East. For almost 2 decades, the Interfaith Encounter Association has been dedicated to promoting peace in the Middle East through interfaith dialogue.
We've got to somehow figure out a way to have two populations that are willing to live with each other. And the only way to do that is to get everybody involved. So what we try to do is say that, well, if religion has been part of the problem, then it's got to also be part of the solution.
The IEA maintains dozens of ongoing encounter groups from Malat to Eilat. These include women's groups, religious groups, educators, healthcare professionals, youth, teen, young adults, and many more.
Our aim is, one, to bring as many as we can of people from different confessions, religions, to sit together in a respectful and peaceful atmosphere to discuss in a peaceful way and a respectful way.
I do this for my kids, my children, not for myself.
And once you get the chance to meet a group, even a small group of 5 or 10 people from the other community, and you have a real conversation with them, this experience changes your, the way you relate to the other.
Our vision is of a society in which the otherness of the other is not only accepted, but truly understood and respected.
Thank you very much, John Joseph. Even though it was 2 minutes long, I think it gave us a good idea. Today we have two panelists from IAE, IEA, I keep getting that wrong. Sheikh Abdul Khalil Al-Tamimi is a Palestinian Islamic scholar born in Hebron in 1979. He holds degrees in Islamic sciences and management. And he also is the chair of the board of directors for Dar al-Arqam Educational Association, and is a veteran coordinator of the Rabbis and Sheikhs group at the Israel Interfaith Association. And on the panel with him is Carolina Frimmer. Carolina is a Jewish Israeli and the community director of Interfaith Encounter Association. She has a bachelor's degree in international relations and a master's in conflict resolution from Hebrew University. She has been a participant in interfaith dialogue groups for a long time and experienced firsthand the powerful impact that these encounters can have. So I would like to turn to Sheikh Tamimi, and I'm going to ask him to tell us a little bit about his experience of encounter, especially in the time of COVID over the past couple of years. Thank you.
I think Sheikh Tamimi had some technical problems because he was here with us and now I don't see him anymore. He said he's trying to connect again. So my apologies.
Oh, so Carolina, I'm going to ask you to go first and then Sheikh will go second.
Okay, so hello everyone.
Spotlight on you.
Okay. There you go.
There.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Carolina Frimmer. As Frederick said, the community director of the Interfaith Encounter Association. I'm speaking from Jerusalem right now. So I just want to tell a little bit about, the Interfaith Encounter itself, what we do, what is our work, and I'll also say about how I kind of got involved with it and how we're trying to manage to keep our activities going during Corona. I'm not sure if we're post-Corona, during Corona, we're somewhere in the middle. We're, I think, in a better situation than we were a year ago or a year and a half ago. So that's promising. And especially here in Israel, things have already started to open up for some time. So I'll also speak a little bit about that. So we also have with us today, Dr. Dostolov, who is the executive director and one of the founders. So if I say anything wrong about IA's founding or if I'm missing anything, I'll be more than glad if he can add or correct me. So the IA was founded in 2001 by a group of different interfaith activists. It was during the second Intifada. So a period of very much like instability. There was a lot of fear and anger a lot of disillusionment with the previous attempts to obtain peace. And so the IA was founding it in this very turbulent context, with the understanding that it doesn't matter which peace outcome we're going to have, which peace agreement is going to have, 1 state, 2 states, 3 states, 5. A basic precondition would be creating, a bottom-up infrastructure for peace. Common people that support the idea of peace, because that was one of, arguably one of the problems with the previous attempts. And so the organization is apolitical in the sense that it does not prescribe a certain solution. We have members that include people from all over the political spectrum, from left to right, and all over the religious spectrum too. So we have religious people, non-religious people, which is the key really for the possibility of achieving some sort of meaningful peace, to have people from all over the spectrum, including even the more extremist, or if you can call that. Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, so including people who are considered not the mainstream, so people really from all over the political spectrum. So the way it works mostly is through small groups that meet generally once a month. Some groups meet more, some groups meet less. And they speak about different intercultural topics, interfaith topics. So they choose a topic, for example, it could be prayer, it could be holidays, it could be food, and they will speak from the perspective of different religions, but also from people's personal perspectives and experiences. Sometimes they hold events and family visits and trips, etc. So in opposition to other dialogue programs, our interfaith encounter groups, they do not have a restricted time frame. We don't say you're going to meet for a year and then like everything's going to change. We have groups that are ongoing. We have many groups that are meeting for more than a decade, because the whole point is really provide a place where people can get to know members from other communities, and the groups themselves become a community, and they become this small community within this turbulent context. And we really saw, for example, during the war last May, that how some groups were trying to share their personal feelings, and there was a lot of hard feelings involved, but they were able to speak in a way that they were not blaming or finger pointing, but really sharing their true feelings in a personal way, and being able to connect with each other, because they felt it was a safe space, and they also cared about the other side because they had been meeting for some time. So that was really heartwarming to see how in practice, this really work that we do, which is like, brick by brick, is really able to build something that during the times of crisis can really hold water, can really create a safe space for people to connect when it's not always safe to do it. So that's about the IA in general. And then how I joined the IA specifically, which also relates to the work. So I come from a community that doesn't exactly value interfaith encounter, a very specific branch within the national religious community. Not everyone is like this, but the community where I come from certainly was, in which they see the Palestinians as an absolute enemies, even in the spiritual level, a very one-sided knowledge of the conflict, a lot of it through religious messianic lenses, but in a way that doesn't leave much room for you to talk to the other. And then I was kind of forced to join an interfaith meeting in college. And then like from the very basics, I understood that, the interfaith language allows you to know the other in a non-threatening environment, in the sense that no one is trying to change your mind, no one is trying to change you, no one is trying to tell you that you're wrong, but you're really trying to meet the other as he is. And that was very reassuring for me. And that was really eye-opening, in the sense that you were able to find beauty not only in the similarities, which we found many, especially between Jews and Muslims, actually, because we do have a lot in common, So I really started with the most basics, the prejudice we felt regarding head coverings. Me and another Muslim woman who wear a hijab, a head covering. And then I started with this small thing. So I started joining interfaith groups as both a participant and an organizer. And when I eventually arrived at the IA, it was actually the first place where I could see other religious people like me. I was always used to be one of the only Orthodox Jews. And it was kind of frustrating for me in a sense. So when I joined the IA, I could see, many different groups of religious people also joining in. And so I joined the IA staff as community director. And what I do is basically keeping track of the activities. Currently, we have 30 groups that are active in many different cities. Some of them within the Green Line, some of them beyond the Green Line. We have groups of many types of people, as you saw in a video, just for women, groups for young people, groups for religious leaders, which Sheikh Tamimi will hopefully speak about soon. And I have really the privilege of being able to get to know all these groups and keep in touch with the coordinators and really keeping track of all these encounters and getting to participate in so many meaningful encounters. I think is really like the most amazing part of what I do. And I feel really privileged that I'm able to do this as my occupation. So to answer the question about the pandemic, so I joined the IA actually was a little less than a year before COVID started. And then the pandemic hit. And of course, I was kind of at loss. I even, for us, the human contact is, of course, crucial. I even told my boss that maybe I should go on unpaid vacation, like most of the country was doing, because there would be no work. And what happened was actually the opposite, is that not only there was a lot of work, but each encounter took much more effort for us to make it happen. There were a lot of barriers. Of course, we sent most of the activities to Zoom, and then we met many things that maybe we didn't realize before it would be a problem. We met a certain asymmetry of infrastructure across communities. We tend to take for granted, access to a smartphone or a good internet connection, and that's not the case. So we sometimes take for granted that people were stuck at home and had nothing to do, and then of course that was also not the case. So in addition, we had the issue of privacy. A lot of people that were fearful that maybe it would be screenshot and it would be shared with someone else, and they didn't feel comfortable with that. And some of them even for their own safety, because in their communities that they live, it is not acceptable to do this kind of dialogue. So that was another issue. So during the intervals between lockdowns, each group had different discussions about if they should meet in person. And then other political ideologies also got involved, if people should be vaccinated or not vaccinated, and a whole new level of conflict that we didn't see before. And you also had to be very sensitive, to understand that, some of the coordinators of our groups were all volunteers, were in a difficult situation, either, financial, or they had to take care of children or sick people. So certainly lots of challenges. And then on the other hand, some groups discovered and really that the Zoom really actually worked best for them, and they really blossomed on Zoom, including a group of Jews and Christians that studied the New Testament together, and right now have people from other places as well, not just from Israel. And that allowed us to connect really in a way that we hadn't done before. We also had the chance to include, international participants, and to hold events on Zoom that we could reach, a larger audience. I really had a lot of people tell me that what they missed the most was the power of connecting through food. So that's certain, a lot of aspects of, the in-person connection, of course, we're missing, not just, the square, but being able to smell and all the sensorial experience of, the food and the smell and the touch and, being in the same place. Of course, you cannot reproduce that on Zoom, But then again, we have different profiles. We have people who are, groups that are more study focused. So on Zoom, it can actually work great for them. So before the pandemic, we had about 40 groups that were working. During the pandemic, we had 20 of them that continue to meet on Zoom or in person in between lockdowns. And I think we cannot say we are completely recovered. As I said, we have right now around 30 groups. Some of them did not come back. But we also had new ones, new groups that, especially after the war in May, decided that it was really, people that decided it was really urgent to do something, and they took it upon themselves to, to continue build the relationship across communities here in the Holy Land. And I don't think things just go back to being what they were, and we're not looking for that at the moment, but we just learn to live with this hybrid life of, managing some of the groups on Zoom, managing groups in person, and dealing with the whole bureaucracy of vaccination. And that includes also ideologies and everything. It's very sensitive. People get very sensitive about that as well. And in the parallel of the challenge that we already had before. So getting permits for Palestinians to cross the Green Line and be able to enter Israeli territory, it can be a very difficult bureaucracy. Then of course, getting to, outreach, getting to really the communities that need the most to participate in dialogue, and to get people to bring other, more of their friends and more of their communities. But I believe that the work that we're doing, with each group, you really see this, the sense of community and the sense of, I had one of the participants say to me, and I'll never forget, that it was during the war in May, and we had an interfaith iftar, which is the breaking of the fast during the Ramadan. And she said to me, it feels like an oasis, because everything out there is just so, intense, and at least here we feel this space where we can connect. And I feel that if we do, the more groups we have and the more oases we create, then the closer we are to peace. And that's what I think we all hope for. Yeah, I'll stop here, and then of course I'll happily take any questions afterwards.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat.
Good. All right, now I think we can have the questions afterwards. Please send them in the chat to us. There are, you can send them to me, and you can send them to Murray Watson, who's on the line, and we'll flip the questions over, or ask them when this is over. I'd like to ask Sheikh Tamimi, and you are again have joined us. There was a bit of a problem before, so we would like to hear your presentation. If you could unmute yourself, we're anxious to hear you. Thank you, Carolina, for a wonderful presentation. Okay.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
You can say my name Sheikh Abu Khalil Al-Tamimi, or Abu Khalil if you can. I was born in Hebron, and I began in 1998. It was the situation was wonderful here in the Holy Land, and there were a serious peace process, and we began with the Interfaith organization and with peace building organization. Also, I began with secular organizations in peace building and dialogue, and always I see, and I grew up learning that there is a special relationship between Muslims and the people of the book. So we have a special relationship. It's not like with others, like atheist, people, or communist people, because the people we consider the people of the book, Jews and Christians, are believers. They believe in God and they believe in prophets. And we share a lot of ideology and belief, really. But there is, as you know, political problems here between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And we see also that some of the Christians are supporting Israel and some of the Christians are supporting the Palestinians. We want to do our best, to do as much as we can and efforts to reduce the gap between the two people, and to make it a better atmosphere for politicians through the interfaith dialogue to achieve an appropriate agreement for everybody. So this is our concentration, and in the Arab and Islamic world, the religious speech is very important, and a lot of audience are hearing from a famous, cleric and spiritual leaders. It's more than other nations. So we want always to concentrate on the mutual issues between us and between the Christians and Jews to have a better situation for the politicians, for better agreements, and for a better future for the coming generations. And the Interfaith Encounter Association is concentrating on this issue, and really it's very, very important, because also the politicians will put their plans and their ideas, their agreements, also regarding to the majority of the people, which also take let's say take the inspiration from religious leaders.
Fidelia, you're on mute, I think.
I have to unmute myself. Thank you. That was a very inspiring presentation. I see the kids are around you and they're inspired as well. That's good to see. John Joseph, I wondered if you could put the two people on the screen, the face of Carolina and the face of Sheikh. Is that possible? I'm not hearing an answer. All right.
Yes, I can do that.
All right, thank you.
Sheikh is on the screen. I'm not sure why you can't see it. He's highlighted, okay. And so is Carolina. There you go. Okay.
All right, the first, we're going to deal with questions, really good presentations. So one of the people in the group is asking, given the work that your group does and other dialogue groups do, what impact do you think you are having on the new government in terms of moving closer to a peace agreement? Do you think you're having any impact on the new government?
I would say it's interesting that in a certain way, we work far from the political arena of, the government and the Knesset and we're not an advocacy organization, right? So we're not, protesting, or we're not, trying to email the MKs or something like that. I think our work is on a parallel sphere that we hope meets in the future with the political sphere, which is really creating more of the infrastructure for the more people support peace, the more people will vote for specific. Now, it's not even a specific parties, because we're not talking about the left or the right, but within the left and within the right, we'll have more voices that will support the idea of peace. And we hope that that's the way you really create what we call the infrastructure for peace. So it's not, I personally don't think we have a direct impact, and especially because governments here change a lot, as you may have seen in the past year and a half, 2 years. I don't remember already. We had so many elections in the past years, but I don't think personally that we have a very direct influence or very immediate influence. Is really the work of building little by little this infrastructure. And what I can say is the IEA has been working for 20 years. And of course, we're not alone in the peace building field. We have many other organizations that are also doing an amazing job. And I do believe you can feel a progress in a lot of senses of how you do have more people, more radical voices, but I think we overwhelmingly have more moderate voices as well, of people from all over the spectrum, having more moderate voices and speaking up for moderation, for not going to extremes. So for every radical politician, you do see much moderate voices that are coming from the people and from all sectors. So I think, if I may answer this question, is not a direct influence, is really on the basis, it's more bottom up. That's how I see it.
Okay, Sheikh, did you want to address the question as well? The question on the impact that the fact of peace groups have on working peace groups have on the government's movement at this time.
Yeah, thank you. Really, the situation is, let's say, it's a little bit different. It's not a big difference, I think, in the Israeli side and in the Palestinian side, about the democracy and the formulating the government. Really, it's as we see, it's a democracy in Israel. So the politicians will be influenced by the people and by the by elections, of course. And also in the Palestinian side, all of the leaders will take care about the attitudes of the people, of the majority of the people. So it's not a big difference. But in Israel, there is always on the government some foreign impact and foreign policies that we see the Israeli government is surrounded by. I think that the Israeli government could do more good things to solve a lot of problems, but sometimes the Israeli government does not care because some politicians will take care about their interest, being in the government, being in the power, so sometimes a lot of big leaders in the right wing, for example, in Israel, they ask the government for many things, many positive things toward the Palestinians, and the government did not respond. And also leaders of the left wing in Israel asking the government another issues that it will reflect positively on the Palestinians, but also the government did not respond. but I think we don't have to give up, and we have to take the hope as a weapon, and to do more and more to influence the Israeli government to be better and better until God willing get an agreement, and also the issue of occupation. We don't want to talk about politics and about the shape of this agreement, but finally the two people must live without any let's say we don't want any other people to say there is an occupation in the Holy Land.
Yes. Sheikh, do you work with, or does IAE work with other peacemaking groups? And Carolina mentioned there are several peacemaking groups. Do you try to work with them, or what do you do, or do you work just on your own?
Yes, I participated with many organizations. Sometimes they invited me to an event, to a conference here in the Holy Land and outside. But my main, let's say, the main organization for me is the Interfaith Encounter Association, and I've been more than 10 years. I'm with Dr. Yuda Solov and the board of directors. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can also say on an organizational level. Sorry, it's the Zoom delay.
To you,
okay.
Spotlight. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that also on an organizational level, we of course cooperate with other organizations. It would be very unwise not to do so, and also not sustainable not to do so. So yes, like as I said, each group has different profiles, so we can have different organizations to cooperate to hold different groups. If I can just cite some of them, so we have a group. Havatid Bamidbar, which is a regional organization in the south, in the desert of the Negev. So our groups there have contact with this organization. For some of our groups in the West Bank, we have connections with Roots, which is an organization that specifically deals with dialogue between settlers and Palestinians. So yes, we definitely are always very happy to cooperate, and I think that's what we try to do at the end, really a network, and we're working for the same. We may be using different methodologies, but we're trying to get to the same place.
Yeah,
really, it's a good numbers. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, really, it's a good thing that I support when we in the IEA cooperate with other organizations in one event and in one conference. Yeah, and Dr. Yuda did it so many times. Yeah, and it was wonderful each time. 3 or 4 organizations together with more people participating in the same place.
So there's a question from Ken. There's a question from Ken first, and then there was a question from Murray. So Ken.
Yes. Go ahead.
So Ken wanted to ask, I think it was something. I'm trying to find the flow. It was about the green line. Do people cross the green line in both directions for these meetings?
Sure. The answer is yes.
Okay. And then Murray had a question, and given the kinds of trusting relationships you develop in these dialogue groups, are there any topics that are out of bounds or intentionally avoided?
Okay, good question. I would say that there are no taboos in the sense that there are no topics that are out of bounds, but we do care a lot about the timing, for example. So any discussion that is political, first of all, it's not our focus. We're talking about groups that generally focus on interfaith, intercultural discussions, but of course we live in the real world. These discussions will appear. But especially when groups are starting to meet, we tend to avoid them, because what we want is that if they eventually get to speak about politics, that they have developed at least some level of trust, of mutual trust, because then it allows for the conversation to be very different. Because if you know the other person, if you care about what they think, if you care about their feelings, you're going to speak in a whole different way, even if it's something that is very painful for you, even if you're angry. You speak in a different way with someone that you feel is your enemy, with someone that you don't care about, or someone that you have at least built some sort of trust. So I think it's more of the timing, but in general, our groups do not focus on political discussions. They tend to focus on more positive things that can create more positive conversations and more intimate conversations as well. They don't get only in the, sometimes political conversations can be very circular and you stay in the same, debate every time. Then if you're talking about something that is spiritual or cultural or historical, then you can get deeper, can get to know people deeper. And that's our goal in a sense.
Thank you. I have another question. I'm wondering if you could speak specifically about a group such as the group of midwives that you spoke about before, or the group of people who are learning, the sheikhs and rabbis who are meeting and talking. So perhaps you could describe one group and what their own goals are.
I can talk briefly about midwives, and then I'll ask Sheikh Tamimi to speak about the rabbis and sheikhs group, because he's the coordinator.
Yes.
So as I said, we have different profiles. I mean, groups, it really starts kind of grassroots. Many times, people turn to us and they say, we want to create a group under the umbrella of the IEA. And the midwives have been meeting for many years. Right now, I don't remember exactly. If Yehuda is here and he remembers, he can jump in. And they tend to, of course, focus on topics that are more related to healthcare or anything that is related to a midwife's job. And they sometimes do some courses together or workshops. And of course, the idea is also to get training together, and especially recognizing that sometimes there is a certain asymmetry of the material that some groups may receive from compared to other groups. And that can be not just Israelis and Palestinians, also sometimes depending, you have different perspectives. If someone comes from a religious background or a non-religious background, it can be very different. So they're there to exchange these different knowledges that also relate to science, but also relate to culture a lot. So that's what they do in their meetings, that it touches upon, the intercultural aspect, but from a specific perspective of their work as midwives. And then Sheikh Tamimi is one of the coordinators from one of our groups for rabbis and sheikhs. So maybe he can speak more about that.
Thank you. Good.
Yeah, thank you, Carolina. Yeah, it's really necessary, because of the political conflict between the two people, to illustrate to each other about the mutual belief that we have, the mutual interpretations sometimes of the Bible, or of the Old Testament, the Torah and the Quran. And there are so many mutual beliefs in religions. I mean, Islam and Judaism, and also on the other hand between Islam and Christianity. There is, let's say, a big banner between us, which is the Shva Mitzvot Bnei Noach, the Noah 7 commitments that
Yes.
we believe together as Jews and Muslims. And this we see in this dialogue the hope for the future to eliminate violence and eliminate the speech of hatred between the two people. And we believe that as much as we can make groups, this will be better on the ground in the Holy Land, in the Palestinian territories, and inside Israel.
So Barbara had a question, and then we had Sister Lucy. So just are there
Yes.
roughly equal number of Palestinians and Jews participating in the groups? From Barbara White.
We try as much as possible to keep the symmetry. Of course, in practice, it can be very difficult depending on the region or depending on the situation. I think, like, I really think it's amazing. I look into my Palestinian colleagues, and I think for many of them, it can be much harder to join the groups than for most Jews. And I really, really appreciate the effort that they do, and it's incredible. So we do try as much as possible to keep the symmetry. And we also at the same time work with the reality on the ground of who is the majority, who is the minority of specific regions. And of course, the possibilities of joining the groups. So if we're having a group that is Israelis and Palestinians, and we're doing within the Green Line, as much as we apply for permits for the Palestinians in the group to come in, sometimes they receive the permit, sometimes they don't receive the permit. So we deal with all that complexity as well. But in generally, yes, we try as much as possible to keep the symmetry.
Thank you. And then there was a question from Sister Lucy. 1 second, I'm just trying to find that question again. Bear with me. And we had, I'm interested to hear from both of you if your group association interests young people, Muslims, Jews, and local Christians on a regular basis.
Should I answer it too? Yes, we do have groups that are specifically for young adults or for teens. Yes, like in general, let's just say in general, teens or young adults tend to prefer to have their own groups. So sometimes it can be harder to include them. Like, of course, we do have groups with mixed ages, but a lot of times their interests or the things they want to do is different. So young groups, a lot of times they would prefer to, instead of every month sitting and speaking about a specific topic, they want to go out together to some restaurant or to visit somewhere. They generally have different time schedules and availabilities from, I don't know, a young mother or someone who works late. Like it's a different needs, let's say. So most of the times they do have their own groups. So we do have groups for young adults and groups, right now, one group for teens. And sometimes we also have interfaith dialogue groups that are between schools, generally high schools. At the moment, we don't, because everyone has been crazy with Corona, and no school right now wants to meet another school, certainly not in person. But we used to have that before Corona. We hope to have that again soon.
So question from Barbara White for Sheikh Tamimi. Are there any groups of Palestinian Muslim and Palestinian Christians?
Really, there are many participants that the organization, host from time to time and invite from time to time. But also I have so many work and activities with the local churches in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem, and in Ramallah. There is, of course, a Christian community, a big Christian community. So I participate also with a lot of events in the churches. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think unless there are some more questions coming in, we are at the end of the questions. I know it's rather late for you guys. For us, we're in the middle of the day, but in Israel, the time is, we're in a different time zone. So I'm going to ask Murray Watson, who is also one of the planners of this event, to thank the group for what you did for us today. Murray.
Thank you, Fidel, and thank you, Carolina. Thank you, Sheikh Tamimi, for making the time at what I know is a busy time for all of you to be with us here this afternoon or this evening, and to give us such a really fascinating insider glimpse of the work of the Interfaith Encounter Association in Israel and the Palestinian territories. It's been fascinating to get a sense of the richness of the networks of relationships that you have built up in a lot of different sectors of society in both communities. And it's been wonderful to hear about the resilience of your work and the creativity with which you've been able to overcome a lot of the challenges that the coronavirus has raised for us. But as you've also made it clear this afternoon, yours is an organization that has a long history of overcoming challenges. So on behalf of all of us with the Christian-Jewish Dialogue of Toronto, we would like to thank you for your time, but most of all, we'd like to thank you for your own personal commitment to this dialogue, which is such an inspiration to the rest of us, and we hope will radiate outward. We hope that that work will continue to spread and to flourish in both communities, and will continue to lay the foundations for a happier, more peaceful future for Israelis, Palestinians, and for that corner of the world. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
May I just add before we finish that I spoke very briefly about the Jewish Christian group that we have that studies the New Testament together. Then, of course, if anyone is interested in joining, we're very serious learners, though. We have we do 10 verses each time because everyone gets really deep into it. And I asked Mr. Mastadrea if he can share my email if anyone wants to get in touch and have more questions afterwards, because I don't think I can do that in the chat. But
I'll tell you what, I'll give you sharing. I thought I made you the co-host, but let's see if I make you co-host. We can do that right now. Yeah. Bear with me. I'm trying to find you in the. There we are.
Excuse me, I want to add something.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And the majority of the Christians here in the Holy Land are considered as Palestinians. There are Arabs and Christians, and there are Arabs and Muslim Arabs and Christian Arabs. And also inside Israel, there are Arab Israeli Muslims and Arab Israeli Christians, like in Nazareth, for example. It's a big Christian city in the north of Israel. So because of that, sometimes there is a Christian participant in the groups, but so let's say the origin of the interfaith, the origin of the dialogue is between the Israelis and Palestinians. So the Christians here came in the Palestinian portion. Even the evangelical Christians who lives in East Jerusalem or in Bethlehem or in Ramallah, so they considered as Palestinians, and they hold a Palestinian IDs, So they are evangelicals, like Pastor John Hagee and Franklin Graham and Robert Jeffress, but they are Palestinians. And also they need a permit to enter Israel. And this is very funny for me because, the evangelical world is the most supporter for the Jewish people, but also there are so many barriers. I meet evangelical pastors, and they say we are the same. We are the same barriers upon us. So we hope always, and we work always to be a better situation. The free of movement here really is very complex, and even our organization, our Jewish partners are suffering when we have a meeting inside Israel, inside Jerusalem, for example, or in Tel Aviv. But we have to do more, and inshallah, God willing, with our cooperation together, we will have a change and have a better situation with all of the friends. Because, of course, Israel and Israeli government is listening for the friends in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, in Australia. Of course, they are considering you as a friend, of course.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much, and thank you for the
Thank you.
clarification.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention at
You're welcome.
the end that our group originally started talking to one another just before the darn COVID experience, because we wanted to come and meet you face to
Yes.
face. But when we couldn't meet you face to face, we decided to meet you over this challenging but very freeing technology called Zoom. So I'd like to thank you again. Murray has thanked you appropriately, Toda Rabah, V'shukra. And this has been so exciting. So to all of you, please listen in for our next trips to Israel or Palestine to find out how the peace is building. Thank you to everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, and thank you. Wonderful
Thank you.
afternoon.
Good to see you, all of you.
Yeah, you
Thank
too.
you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.